Right, so overnight we've had confirmation, as if we needed it really, that Israel absolutely does not want a ceasefire. It's now beyond doubt because not only is Benjamin Netanyahu a dishonest broker in any ceasefire attempts, but he's been prepared to use deadly force, it seems, not only to block any progress towards peace, but to further antagonise the world to widen the war he's determined to keep going. Netanyahu's lies have been exposed to fatal effect in order to specifically wreck any notions of peace. And where we might have been expecting that Israeli response to the Iranian airstrike on Sunday night, they have instead chosen different targets entirely to focus last night's aggression on. And in another desperate play by Netanyahu to drag another player into the war, he is insisting on driving the Middle East towards, and possibly much further afield as well. He is a deranged madman, and as much as I'll always advocate for the diplomatic and negotiated solution, I struggle to see how Israel can be stopped when it is led by a guy for whom peace appears to mean the same as failure, and whose position is dependent on keeping the violence going.
Are you saying Hassan Nasrallah had agreed to a ceasefire just moments before he was assassinated?
He agreed, yes. We agreed completely. Lebanon agreed to ceasefire, but consulting with the Hezbollah, the speaker, Mr. Berry, consulted with Hezbollah, and we informed the Americans and the French that what happened. And they told us that Mr. Netanyahu also agreed on the statement that was issued by both presidents.
Okay, well,
right, so that was a short clip there featuring Lebanese Foreign Minister Abdallah Rashid Bohabib speaking last night on PBS to Christiane Amanpour. And he dropped one hell of a bombshell there, because he just sat there and told Amanpour that assassinated Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah had agreed to a 21-day ceasefire that had been brokered by France and the US, and he alleged was also agreed to by Benjamin Netanyahu as well. That is what Bohabib claims Lebanon was told by the US and France, only for Israel to then launch the attack it did, which killed Nasrallah, along with some 2,000 Lebanese civilians living in the 6 tower blocks Israel levelled in order to get to him. That's the value of Israel's promises, of Israel's word, of its commitment to achieving peace. They don't want anything of the sort. Now take that knowledge and cast your mind back to July, when Israel also assassinated Hamas's negotiator Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, partly the reason for the Iranian attack on Israel's military installations on Tuesday night. The pragmatist in the Hamas leadership, as he was regarded as, the guy who tempered the more firebrand Yahya Sinwar, who now leads Hamas without that negotiator's influence, the guy who was also suing for peace. That's 2 peace negotiators Israel has swept off the table. Attacking another sovereign state, even as our rubbish here in the UK continue to kiss Israel's backside, along with our politicians, claiming the attack by Iran was unprovoked, making out that Iran is some kind of warlike nation, when actually Iran haven't deliberately started war themselves for literally hundreds of years now. And Israel are currently waging war on 8 fronts and have certainly fired on at least 5 other nations in just the last few months. This isn't a nation looking for peace. It's a nation that is looking for war, and to keep war going. And it doesn't take a genius to see it, nor condemn those supporting them for not supporting a peaceful solution. If they are still deluding themselves in that, then they are mugs. But the wider consensus is that that our politicians have been bought and paid for to shield for Israel like they are, and therefore, despite their atrocities which never get condemned, they support the war and aggression they are conducting instead. You only had to look at Keir Starmer rushing to a podium to condemn Iran to see that, when he's never anywhere to be seen to condemn Israel. Literally on the same day Iran retaliated, Israel bombed out an orphanage in Gaza. Little kids were their target, deliberate target, and our leaders are supporting that by their omission. Starmer never mentioned it. Utterly inhuman to not be shocked and appalled and sickened at such a move. But it's Israel all over, or the government of Netanyahu at any rate. Iran's targets that they were all condemned for were all military, just as they were only targeting military sites when they attacked or retaliated against Israel back in April, the first time Iran had ever struck Israel. And again, that was a retaliation for Israel bombing their embassy in Damascus, the Syrian capital. Which segues on to the other incident I need to bring up. Because last night, despite having been hit by Iran the night before, despite desperately trying to get across the Lebanese border at multiple points yesterday as well, and apparently getting no more than about 100 meters before getting turned back by Hezbollah, Israel decided to take aim at Syria once again, but not before dropping chemical weapons, white phosphorus, illegal to use in civilian areas as we should all know by now, on the city of Beirut, throwing a tantrum and throwing weapons around illegally yet again. But again, this is Israel. What kind of country is attacking so many nations all in one go, and we're supposed to believe they want peace? Our leaders have lost this argument already, yet still stand at podiums and bleat otherwise. But the attack on Syria wasn't just an attack on Syria, because this time Israel targeted an arms depot, warehouses, at the Khmeimim military base near Jableh and Latakia in Syria, which isn't a Syrian airbase. It's a Russian one. Israel have now poked the bear. They've made a direct attack on, ostensibly, Russian property, Russian territory. Here's an excerpt from the Bulgarian military news site covering this. According to Syrian TV sources, an Israeli airstrike targeted a warehouse at the Russian Khmeimim base. The bombing also hit various military spots in Latakia province, aligning with the assault on the warehouse. It is reported that Israel launched the attack approximately 1 hour after an Iranian Qasem Fars Airlines plane touched down. Interestingly, the strike selectively avoided the runways and towers at the Latakia airfield, launching 30 missiles at 3:55 a.m. from naval warships, which triggered efforts to extinguish the resulting fire. Following the Israeli bombardment, a Russian air patrol was observed over Latakia skies. Meanwhile, the Times of Israel conveyed a cautious note on the incident, employing terms like allegedly rather than confirming the strike directly. The paper mentioned that a weapons depot near the coastal city of Latakia was purportedly hit during the night time, citing pro-government Sham FM radio reports that Syrian air defences engaged targets over the sea in the area. According to the station, firefighters were busy combating a blaze in Jableh, located south of Latakia, which opposition media identified as a weapons depot. Shared footage on social media highlighted the aftermath of the attack on weapons reportedly routed through Syria from Iran, destined for Hezbollah in Lebanon, as reported by Emmanuel Fabian for the Israeli Resource. This is the first time Israel have ever targeted a Russian military base, a Russian anything, in fact, and they did it in order to take out a cache of what they believed were weapons destined for Hezbollah, stored in a warehouse or depot there. Thus far, at time of writing, I've not found any official response from Russia over this, but it can't be seen as anything other than another major escalation by the genocidal regime of Benjamin Netanyahu, and a desperation to expand their war as far as possible, and once again talk of World War III arises. Now this will again give Western backers of the Israeli regime a massive headache, especially the US and UK, who have of course been asked repeatedly by Volodymyr Zelensky if Ukraine, if he can bomb Russian air bases with our Storm Shadow long-range missiles, for example. He's been told no by the US, although Keir Starmer is more than happy to let Zelensky do this because he's a fool. And he'll be looking at what Israel have just done and no doubt be looking at the US and UK and say, well, if you're going to let Israel do it, why won't you let me do it and let Ukraine bomb Russia? The thing is, the US have, I'm sure, absolutely not given Israel the green light to strike Russia. They got green lit to strike Lebanon by Biden, as covered in a video I did yesterday, but not Russia, not a Russian base in Syria. But again, it ups the ante to such a degree again that Netanyahu will hope that this time he's done enough to get the US involved more proactively, because they have no control over him. Especially if Russia now end up pledging a military response. I'm hoping that their issues in Ukraine, which continue to drag on, means Putin won't want to engage on another front directly. At least not at this point, though it may embolden him to provide arms to Hezbollah more overtly or directly, which would still be an escalation. Still something nobody who wants to see a peaceful resolution really wants to see happening. But again, it's Israel who you have to point the finger of blame at. It really is time the West got real. Netanyahu doesn't want peace. He is out of control and won't stop. And this is now beyond doubt. His hold on power depends on keeping this war going, spreading it further, because if he opts for peace, the hard right of his coalition government will pull out and collapse his government. That is his only priority, not hostages, not safety, not his country, not his people, just more war to keep his own far-right flank on board so he remains Prime Minister. No price is too high for him to pay to stay in power. The only way peace is coming, short of the US cutting arms supplies themselves off, which is just never going to happen, is via his removal as a starting point. Speaking of the US, of course, whilst they might not have greenlit a strike against Russia and cast a blind eye to assassination while pretending to be working towards a ceasefire, as Israel has also done, Biden's administration did apparently sign off on Israel invading Lebanon, though, of course, being Israel, it's a cross-border incursion. That's the language used in the media, isn't it? It's not an invasion. That word is reserved for Russia in regards to Ukraine, you see. And we can't compare Israel to Russia, can we? Couldn't possibly do that. Such is the double standard we've become used to from all of our politicians and mainstream media, though, isn't it? Check out that story in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.